Imagine being a prisoner of war, thousands of miles from home, with winter's icy grip closing in. What would make you risk everything for a chance at freedom? In the dead of a Maine winter, a prison camp stood silent among the dark spruce and fir trees, its secrets buried deep in the snow. Barbed wire circled the land, and guard towers cast long shadows over rows of rough wooden buildings. For months, nothing changed. The prisoners worked, ate, and slept in silence. But the war outside was closing in, and a profound change was coming to the camp. In 1944, World War II had reached even this distant corner of America. Maine's economy, which was built on potatoes, paper, and lumber, faced a serious crisis. Young men were enlisting or leaving for factory jobs in other states like Massachusetts and Connecticut, which left industries desperate for workers. Pulpwood, a critical material for artillery shell containers and maps, was in high demand, and the local workforce couldn't keep up. Congresswoman Margaret Chase Smith and Senator Owen Brewster worked hard to find a solution. They asked the War Department to send captured German soldiers to fill the labor gap. Though some communities felt uneasy, nearly 4,000 POWs arrived at 4 camps across northern Maine by 1944. One of these was at Spencer Lake, a compound that had been built for 250 men but was now crammed with 310. For 8 months, the camp had been a world of forced quiet, but beneath that calm surface, something was stirring. That silence was about to be shattered, setting off a manhunt that would echo through the frozen hills and become the largest in Maine's history. It all started because 3 German prisoners were unwilling to accept their fate behind the barbed wire. The Spencer Lake camp looked like a piece of the war dropped into the deep woods. 22 rough wooden buildings huddled together, their roofs burdened with snow. They were watched over by guard towers that cast long shadows in the weak winter light. Most of the prisoners, barely out of their teens, had been hardened by fighting in the deserts of North Africa as part of Rommel's Africa Corps. Some had even picked cotton in Louisiana before being sent to Maine's frozen forests. There they worked long hours cutting trees, chopping ice, and hauling logs, watched by soldiers who were just as cold and tired as they were. Many of them spoke little English, communicating in halting phrases or through interpreters. For months, there had been no trouble and no hint of rebellion. The prisoners ate, worked, and slept, their lives bound by the strict routine of the camp and the cold that kept them focused on survival. But 3 of the youngest prisoners, mere teenagers, felt a different kind of pull. For Franz Keller, 18, Horst Schlueter, 19, and Antone Geib, 20, the idea of waiting out the war was unbearable. They were driven not by hatred, but by a powerful mix of youthful defiance and a shared dream of a life beyond the wire. They had a specific and relatable gripe about another summer with biting mosquitoes, black flies, and no seams, but their true motivation was freedom. On the night of March the 7th, 1945, Keller, Schlueter, and Geib made their move. They had been planning in secret for weeks, tucking away rations of sugar and bread in pouches sewn beneath their clothes. From their ice harvesting work detail, they stole axes and a map from a French-Canadian woodcutter. Their ingenuity was clear in the tools they made. They crafted crude snowshoes from rail ties, short planks, leather belts, and stovepipe wire. But the most remarkable thing was their compass, which was made from a sewing needle, a magnetized coil, and a tin peach can lid. It was so well made that a game warden later said it rivaled any from a real outdoors store like LL Bean. Their plan was daring. Head east through the forest, avoiding roads and towns and traveling only at night. Their goal was the Maine coast, nearly 100 miles away, where they hoped to sneak aboard a freighter headed for Argentina, a country that was friendly to Germany. The nearest public road was 12 miles from the camp, but the trio believed the cold and distance would protect them. They seized their chance. A guard dozed off, and in a moment, they slipped past the barbed wire, vanishing into the snow-covered timber. They didn't know their freedom would be short-lived, or that a massive search would begin before dawn. By the time the alarm spread through Spencer Lake, the escapees were deep in the forest. Snow muffled their footsteps, and their crude snowshoes kept them from sinking into the deep drifts. Guided by their handmade compass and stolen map, they moved only at night, hiding by day under shelters they made from pine boughs and packed snow. The forest was silent except for the groan of ice and the distant crack of trees in the wind. For 2 days, they were ghosts in the wilderness, leaving not a single footprint. But back at the camp, the stillness was broken, and a full-scale manhunt was gathering force. Major William Marshall, the camp commander, sent urgent pleas for help. By morning, 30 officers from the Maine State Police, Somerset County Sheriff's Office, Maine Warden Service, and the FBI had arrived. Surveillance planes circled overhead, their engines echoing over the frozen hills. Bloodhounds struggled in the bitter cold, and newspaper headlines spread fear of fugitives. Marshall's men had tried to assure visiting officers that the wilderness would stop any escapes, even telling Hollywood-inspired stories of bears and hostile Indians to scare the prisoners. But Keller, Schlueter, and Geib were not scared, and the search found nothing. nothing. Not a footprint, not a whisper. The trail was growing colder until an unlikely person stepped in. Bill Hall had lived alone in the Maine woods since 1932 in a small one-room cabin halfway between the logging camp and the POW compound. Known as eccentric or dangerous, depending on who was telling the story, Hall avoided people but knew the forest better than anyone. Every trail, ridge, and river crossing was etched in his mind. When the manhunt stalled, wardens turned to him for help. Hall's first move was pure theater. He harvested a deer within earshot of the camp, stuffed its organs into a grain sack, and carried the dripping bundle to the POW fence. Through an interpreter, he tried to warn the prisoners, "Let this be a lesson to you." The translation came out as "tie your shoes," which made the guards laugh and the prisoners grin. But Hall had made his point. Then he turned serious. The fugitives, he said, couldn't cross the wide, fast-moving rivers to the south in winter. Instead, he predicted, they would head east toward West Forks, which was 12 miles away. The terrain there, he explained, would funnel them into a specific area. His prediction was a game changer, redirecting the search to a narrow stretch of wilderness. Hall's hunch was spot on. 2 game wardens pushed east toward West Forks, following faint impressions in the snow that most searchers would have missed. The tracks led to a patch of spruce where a rough lean-to stood half buried in drifted snow. Inside, Keller, Schlueter, and Geib huddled around a small fire, their axes propped nearby. The wardens held their positions, commanding the men to come out. There was no fight and no chase. It was just 3 exhausted figures surrendering in the stillness of the winter woods. 5 days after their escape, on March 12, 1945, they were marched to a nearby country store where army trucks were waiting to take them back into custody. The escape was over, but the story wasn't finished. Back at Spencer Lake, security was tightened, but the prisoners faced no harsh punishment. A Red Cross visit confirmed they were being treated fairly, though the POWs did have one complaint. They were tired of American white bread. Major Marshall, an understanding man, ordered a Dutch oven and supplies for dark, German-style loaves, which was a small act of kindness that spoke volumes. For many prisoners, their war years in Maine left them with mixed memories. Some longed for their shattered homeland. Others volunteered to dismantle the camps rather than face labor in England's coal mines or France's ruins. Franz Keller's path was the most remarkable. After being put in solitary confinement at Hulton for the escape, he studied astronomy through a correspondence course from the University of Maine. He returned to Germany in 1946 to become an engineer, and by 1957, he was back in the U.S., working on NASA's Apollo missions. The young man who built a compass from a tin can lid earned a NASA commendation as a U.S. citizen for his work on space exploration technology. His journey from fugitive to space pioneer was a testament to the power of second chances. Years later, people still remembered the voices of the German prisoners, drifting through the cold air as they worked in the woods. The song they always sang was "Don't Fence Me In," the 1944 hit by Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters. It was the only English many of them knew, and they sang it over and over, their voices carrying across the snow. To those who heard it, the prisoners were not just enemy soldiers, they were young men, graduates, teachers, musicians, and engineers who longed for a normal life. The escape from Spencer Lake wasn't about violence or bloodshed. It was about 3 determined men who faced a frozen wilderness and the strange mix of chance and humanity that ties people together, even in wartime.
Oh, give me roads, endless roads, where the prairie winds will blow. I'll wander far where silver rivers flow. Don't tie me down, don't close the door. I'll keep on riding, chasing more. Let me roam free, let me roam free, through valleys wide and skies I long to see. Let me roam free, let me roam free, on my saddle with the stars in front of me. I want the hills, golden hills, where the open trail begins. Hear coyotes call, feel the freedom on my skin. No walls, no chains, no fences tall. I'll answer every canyon's call. Let me roam free, let me roam free, through valleys wide and skies I long to see. Let me roam free, let me roam free, on my saddle with the stars in front of me. Send me where the morning sun will rise, let it light the hope inside your eyes. The open range will always be my song. That's where your restless soul belongs. Let me roam free, let me roam free, through valleys wide and skies I long to see. Let me roam free, let me roam free, forever on the wind, just let me be.